as a YouTube artist, there are certain videos that I know I'm gonna have fun making. There are certain videos that I look forward to, and for some reason, I just got this itch to make some glow-in-the-dark art, and I'm gonna scratch it by turning lit into the ultimate glow-in-the-dark ink. So please follow along as we explore this and see how well of an idea this was. So let's go ahead and roll that awesome intro. What's up guys, and welcome to the channel. My name is BLACKEST, and what we do here is we mostly explore comic art through the method of inking. It is my favorite medium to work with, and today we're doing something really different as I'm gonna try and make my own glow-in-the-dark ink using lit. Now this is not my first time using lit. I have used it in the past before. In fact, I used it in this video right here, which I definitely recommend watching and checking out. That way you get a full, comprehensive, and understanding of what lit is. It is the most glow-in-the-dark glow pigment. It is amazing. It is made by Simple, who is a very talented artist who makes a lot of really cool, really awesome, very gimmicky art products, but they're really good high quality. Like, he makes Black 3.0 and Blink. Definitely recommend checking out, and it is available on his website. In fact, nowadays he actually has different colors. Now when I first used lit, I did make several mistakes. For example, I actually used refined linseed oil, which you can see right here, and that was a big mistake. I was going off of advice from the website and from a friend of mine who's an oil painter. So when I had some pigments, he recommended to use linseed oil and a compound to actually use the two together, and well, I just used linseed oil. So unfortunately, I didn't use the paint in the best way possible, and it wasn't an accurate representation of what this powder could do because I wasn't getting a smooth blend with it. I really liked how it looked at the time, but now with a lot more experience and knowledge under my belt, I realized the mistakes that I made. So today we're going to be doing something quite different. Instead of trying to turn this into a paint, I want to turn this into a super glow-in-the-dark ink, and we're going to have to start with some of the basics and how we're actually going to do that. First thing we're going to have to do is get a container for this, and as much as I would love to use an actual inkwell, I want to make a good amount that I won't have to worry about replenishing or remaking for quite a bit of time, and I think this bottle is going to work. Next, we're going to actually need a medium for this, something that's going to allow the pigment to bond with and be able to be mixed with so we can get what we need. Now, we can't use linseed oil, so we're going to actually use a combination of golden high flow medium and Liquitex acrylic medium flow additive. The reason we're going to use these two is because this one is a very nice consistency. I really like the consistency of golden high flows. However, if you notice, it's not fully transparent. While the Liquitex flow additive medium it is way too liquidy and doesn't run off a dip pen. I did a few tests ahead of time, and really we're looking for this consistency but with this clarity, so I think a mixture of two in the bottle along with the actual pigment will be the best option. And of course, to do this, we're going to actually need a mixture in here as well. If you guys do spray paint art or use paint markers, you usually can hear us shaking, and that's because there's a glass or metal ball in there that's actually shaking and mixing the paint to make sure it has proper flow, and we're going to need that here. And I'm not going to lie guys, I had a lot of trouble actually trying to find the right item for that. My original idea was to just use a marble, but I could not find any. I don't know if it's just stores not selling it in my area, but there was no toy store that had marbles. So I decided to just use a lug nut. I had plenty of them lying around, and I was just going to soak it in vinegar so it's disinfected, clean it up so I can use it as my mixer. But after starting that, me and Sarah decided to have some ramen, and I remember there are certain Japanese sodas that have a little glass marble in it, and the ramen joint that we were at just happened to sell it. So taking it home, popping it open, and enjoying the entire soda, delicious by the way, we then wrapped the bottle in some plastic bags, gently broke it, grabbed the ball out, cleaned it, made sure all the extra broken glass off, and also soaked it in vinegar just to make sure it was nice and clean before washing it again, and we can use it for this project. So taking our glass ball and popping it into our tanner, we now have our mixer, and we can start adding our pigment and flows to create the right combination of what we need. So I had a good idea going into making this ink. I knew I was going to use quite a bit of the powder and quite a little bit of the actual liquid itself. I did a pretty good ratio that I thought would work, and when I was mixing it and I tested it, I just wasn't happy with the results. It wasn't as popping and glowing as I wanted, so I added more powder and kept adding more powder. It got to the point where I actually dumped the entire container worth of powder into my actual mixture, and it wasn't still as good as I wanted, and I think part of that is because I didn't actually plan on buying more lit for this video. I was just going to use what I had left over from the previous one, and I think I need to get some more lit just to kind of add to it and get a really good glow ratio, but I'm definitely going to need more lit to really make this pop. So let's go ahead and order some. I decided to go ahead and put the little label that I made on the bottle. I really like it. It says J-Rod's Glow Ink powered by lit. Now, you guys may know me for doing a lot of illustration and comic art, but my original degree was in graphic design before I switched to animation. And honestly, I love doing little product labels. I love doing logos. Stuff like that's really fun for me. And this is one that I want to just do a nice little simple thing. Nothing too crazy. I thought about doing something nice like an Illustrator, but then I realized, oh wait, I would have to print it on a sticker sheet. And I did that in college and I'm not doing it again. I'm sorry guys, I just can't do it again. I am not that strong enough. So after placing my order in for lit and then realizing that it's going to take over a week to get here, I decided to just put the project on hold. And I'm glad I did because I noticed something. In the actual bottle where I'm mixing my glow-in-the-dark ink, I noticed that the powder and the liquid medium were not fully binding as they would separate. At the bottom is the actual powder itself, and then on the top is the liquid, and that's not good. That is not what I need. I need them to bond, I need them to fuse, and that's when it hit me. There might be something I can do to help this while I wait for the pigment to come in, and so I went out and got Deco Art's Ultimate Glow-in-the-Dark paint. It's 10 times stronger than their original glow-in-the-dark paint, and here's why. I'm going to use this paint as a bonding agent. It will be thick enough to actually blend with the pigment powder, but then be loosened and thinned out with a liquid medium. So I should be able to have something that I add to it, make it a little thicker but still thin with everything combined, and allow for a proper bonding between everything. At least in theory, and it's going to be my best shot because I really don't know what I'm going to do if this doesn't work. Either way, I'm mixing it all together and I'm going to put it to the side to see if I still have the same separation issues. After putting this project on a brief hold, we definitely needed more of that lip powder. It finally came in the mail and I was so excited to unbox it and start working with it. The pigment was super fresh and glowed like crazy, so mixing it into our paint gave us the exact consistency and punch that I needed. It's exactly what I was hoping to get with this project. And while the pigment itself bonded perfectly with the paint, I did notice that both of them were still separating from the acrylic high glow, which is perfectly fine because, as I found in my research, that's actually normal and that does happen when the two of them sit together after they're mixed. So putting the glass ball in there to help mix and shake things up was a good idea because I gave it a good thorough shake for about 2 minutes. It is ready to go and I am just so excited with how this is coming out because we are at the point now where I'm confident that we can start to test it and get the results that we are looking for. So let's go ahead and dive into our test. I have been adjusting my camera settings to try and properly show you guys what this looks like in person, and I cannot do it justice. In person, this looks amazing. Like, these are bright, neon, glowing green. It's awesome. However, from testing it, I like the glow, but I'm definitely running into the issue where it's too thick, and because of that, it's not getting a proper flow in my dip pen, which is not good. I have two solutions to this. One, I can just use a brush. It's fine. You know, I'm good with a brush. Or I can add more of the acrylic high flow medium to make it a little thinner. So let's actually go ahead and do that real quick. So I adjusted the camera again, and this is closer to what I'm seeing. It's not as intense as in person, but it's giving you a good idea. So it is easier to control. I'm getting more consistent line width, and we're still keeping that intense glow. That is awesome. That's really good, so we can definitely use that. I'm going to try mixing with the colors again, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a brush. I'm going to mess with the cameras. We're just going to kind of refine everything a little bit more. I think this is going to be a good balance. It's definitely showing a little more purple than what it is in person, but you're getting a good idea for how bright and how glowing this is. It's really, really fun to mess with. So I'm going to have a little bit of it, and let's see what it's going to look like. And, oh, that's cool. That's really cool. Something that's worth noting, in person, it's a little more transparent than I would like. I don't want more of a solid glow. I wonder if it's because I'm going more from the top. I don't know, but I do like the effect. I kind of like how a little bit of the color is showing from beneath, actually, and it layers pretty well. Which is interesting because acrylics, they layer really, really well, but usually they're not transparent. It's more like oil, watercolor, gouache, depending on the water ratio. So very interesting. Actually, take that back. Oils can layer really well too and not be transparent depending on the oil mix, but you know what I mean. I actually really like how this is going down, so I can already see some of the effects at really, really subtle tones. Very excited about that. And again, I wish it was capturing just how much this is glowing. This is just glowing like crazy. I absolutely love this. This is so cool. That's going to be the brush test. It is performing really, really well. Now, there's two more tests that I want to perform before we move on to creating our masterpiece with this glow ink, and that's going to be all done on this sheet of paper paper right here. I want to see how this paint and pigment will react to different materials that I both plan on using for this piece and also just commonly use in general. I want to make sure that I'm not going to have any weird layering issues, that I'm not going to have any weird blending issues, reactivation issues. And I just want to have a good idea of how this is going to work before I go in so that I can start making those corrections on any mistakes or problems and ultimately avoid making them. Starting from the top, I have Tombow, Zebra, Pentel brush pen, Micron and Copic for my fine liners. For my inks, I have Winsor Newton's Black India ink, my favorite India ink, Blink the Blackest Black ink, another Stuart Semple product, and Sig's Cartoonist Sumi ink, my favorite Sumi ink. For alcohol markers, I have quite a few in here. Starting from the top, I have Copic Fluorescent. Below that, I have Prismacolor, the Winsor Newton alcohol marker. Then I have a selection of normal Copic. And lastly, for alcohol markers, 2 Blick gray markers. And lastly, watercolor. I do a lot of watercolor art as an inker, so I want to make sure that this is going to also work well. So let's go ahead and switch the lights. Starting from the top again, we can see that Tombow is doing pretty good. Zebra also looks pretty good. Pentel brush pen, as always, stands the test of time. Micron takes it like a champ. Seriously, these things are insane. And Copic, just as I thought, also took it like a champ. Winsor Newton, no problems so far, and we will inspect them afterwards to see if there's any bleeding in a better lit environment. Moving on to Blink, and it is also holding up. Let's go ahead and move on to the Sumi ink. It is doing good. Sumi ink is great because it is alcohol marker proof and also waterproof, which is phenomenal for the work that I do. We're going to do the Copic ones first. They are doing good. This was one that I was really nervous on because I didn't know how this was going to actually react. Prismacolors next, which they, yes, are alcohol markers, but all alcohol markers are made differently. They blend differently. They have some different ingredients, different ways to mix the pigments, and that one's doing really good. Let's go ahead and do Winsor Newton while we're at it. Again, same kind of mentality. Yes, they are alcohol markers, but every alcohol marker reacts differently with things. We're going to do the normal Copics, and so far so good. Nothing crazy, nothing I can see right now, which is good. We're going to do the Blick ones, and now the one that I think will react the most, and I'm really curious about, it's going to be the water. From what I can tell, it looks like it is reacting a little bit, and we're going to put the lights on and see how they react. Turning the lights on, we have a few very interesting results that I didn't notice when the lights were off. Number one, it looks like Tombow actually had some bleeding issues, which is really interesting. Did not expect that and didn't see it when we were just using the black light. Zebra also had some issues, which isn't surprising as they tend to not be as water resistant as Tombow. But the Pentel brush one really caught me by surprise. Normally I never have an issue with them. Same thing with Micron and Copic, so that's very interesting. Our Winsor Newton, Blink, and our Sumi inks also reacted interestingly. For one, there is some bleeding around the Winsor Newton, which is really surprising for me because they're really good and consistent normally. The Blink one, a little bit like right here, and that's it. So I wonder if that was just when I moved my brush to here. Same thing with the Sumi ink. It's just right here where I always did my first little kind of swatch and then worked my way up. So I'm wondering if the Blink and the Sumi ink is fully proof and it was just like contaminated from the other one. So we're gonna have to retest that one. And we can also see here in our middle swatch that it does have a slight green tint to it. Very subtle, very faint, but it is good to know that's there. The Copic fluorescent colors did really well. No bleeding, no blending at all. You can almost not even tell that the paint's on there, which is really interesting. Same thing with the Prismacolor one. Again, they did really well. Winsor Newton did really well. The Copics also did really well. The Blick ones did really well. And just as I thought, the watercolors were reactivated. I'm gonna actually go in right now while the lights are on, and we're gonna test these 3 inks again because I'm really curious to see if that was an actual bleeding issue with them or contamination. I think, yeah, looking at Zig's, that was definitely a contamination because it is not bleeding at all. What about Blink? Yeah, no bleeding at all. Oh, wait, look right there. It's bleeding. It is definitely bleeding. So that's interesting. Even Blink is not lit proof. So if you really work and rub it, you can actually get the ink to bleed. That's really interesting. Now, I believe Blink is also Indian based. So Winsor Newton, yep, right there, we're getting that bleeding. That's really interesting. I'm gonna try again with Sumi. I'm really hoping Sumi won't bleed. I'm really working at it. I'm getting a little bit. I'm getting a little bit of bleeding, guys. Like just the faintest bit of bleeding. Yeah, right there. But I'm really like rubbing it on. I'm going really extreme. I think what we need to do is seal the ink and then we can actually go in and do all of that coloring. And I know how we're going to do that because the final test we're going to do is going to involve 2 more spray varnishes. So after getting those really interesting results, we have 2 more tests to do, and that's with these spray varnishes that I picked up, and I am so excited to try them out. This right here is the Krylon. I want to say Camera because it looks like Gamera with the K varnish. This is a really highly rated and it dries matte varnish for ink and alcohol markers. So we're going to do a test with this one here, but we're also going to do a test with this one as well. The test we're going to do with this one is we're going to see, one, how well it actually goes on the glow paint, because I really want to see how it layers, because this has a UV activation in it. So when you shine a UV light, whatever you spray has a blue-purple glow. So very excited to be using this. But I also want to see how well this spray can go on top of this spray. So we have a few tests we're going to do. I'm going to make some new swatches and we're going to give them a test. We're going to see how it works. To do our spray test, I got the samples and we're going to grab everything. I'm filming this with my lovely wife behind the camera and the amazing pool in the background. Coco's running around having a blast. And I realized probably shouldn't spray this table because this table's older than me. Alrighty, so we have our swatches, we have our sprays. These have had plenty of time to dry. These are going to be the two that we're going to Camera or Gamera, however you pronounce it, this varnish on that, and then this one will be the UV varnish, and we will also do another test with the other ones on layering, but let's go ahead and spray these first. And as a reminder, did do the same amount of swatches from our previous test, but I did add a few more materials to see how they're going to react. Also, I should probably wear a mask or some type of like face covering. I couldn't find one at all. Don't try this at home, kids.
Shake, 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 shake your booty, shake your booty.
I can make the Morocco jokes because I'm Latino. Spray number 2, give this one a good shake. And we're gonna give this, now it says it will be dry in 15 minutes. We're gonna actually give it 2 hours because it needs to properly dry before handling according to the instructions. So we found some masks, but it has been an hour and a half, a little over that, and so I think we're actually ready to do another coat. We're gonna see how the UV looks. Now I know it's really bright, we are in the shadows, so let's see. Okay, so yeah, I definitely will say I expected a little more. I could see a little bit here where it's glowing. Maybe it's one of those things where we have to do multiple layers.
And it might be hard to compare it with the glow that you already have on there.
That is true. If we compare it to the page here, yeah, blue. Now granted, that's more in the sun, but yeah, that's about the same. Oh, wait. A little more intense in person. I don't know how that's coming off on camera. We are going to quickly varnish this. So let's give this a good shake. So we're gonna give this another hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours to dry, and then we're gonna compare and see how it looks. Very excited because the results of this test are really going to heavily influence how we're gonna do the final piece. So diving into the results of our testing, we're going to start with the UV effect sheet, and this gave me a lot of really good answers. This tells me that not only will this paint still glow with 2 different varnishes on it, it doesn't matter if it is our sealing varnish or our UV varnish. And it's really cool because you can see where the tape was that the UV didn't have any effect on the paper, and you just see how it's bouncing off. It's really cool. It has a different glow effect. In person, it looks really amazing. Now, one thing that's interesting is the Montana UV effect really is meant more for 3G objects, really to make those 3D objects pop and glow under the black light, but I still think we can really use it, and the fact that we can continue to layer it is going to be amazing. I also love that it's not affecting any of the glow. Like, that was my major concern. Is this thing going to be blocked? Will it not glow? The fact that it's still going to glow under all of the varnishes is amazing. Diving into our second test, it yielded even better result, and this was the opposite from our first one. I did the KMR first and then the UV on top, which is what I'm planning to do with the piece we're going to make, and it was great. I love the result. The ink right here is glowing like crazy, both on camera and in person. It looks amazing and cosmic, and everything layered perfectly. So this is really good. This is really building my confidence in the piece that we're going to make. And last, but certainly not least, the most important test we had to make, our materials test. On this piece of paper is a swatch of all of the most common material that I use to make art with, and I need to make sure that all these are going to properly be sealed with our KMR varnish, and I also went ahead and sprayed with the UV varnish just to double check everything. Let's go ahead and do a quick deep dive in all the materials and see how they reacted. We can see that Micron had no issues at all, while Copic had some fading, something I really wasn't expecting because of how high quality their ink is. Tombow and Zebra didn't fade at all, and if anyone was going to fade on this chart, I thought it would be them. Pentel's brush pen was phenomenal. Winsor Newton's Black India ink, Blink the Blackest Black ink, and Zig's Cartoonist Sumi ink had no issues at all. Interestingly, Presto had some cracking. I'm not sure if it's because it dried a little thicker than normal. Taking a look at the side that has all of our coloring coloring material, Copic Fluorescent and normal Copics had no issues at all, no discoloring or staining in any way, which is great to see. Spectra Noir had no problem, Prismacolor had no problem, and Blick had no problem at all. Winsor Newton's alcohol markers and their metallic markers didn't give me any issues. Winsor Newton's watercolors, however, reacted perfectly, and I was really nervous with this because watercolors are super finicky with different varnishes, so I'm happy to see how this one ended up being perfect. Same thing with my random watercolors. I absolutely love how nothing changed about them. The same cannot be said with Dr. P. Martin's bleed proof white ink. My favorite white ink to use for cleanup mistakes, completely crystallized and hardened in this really weird, distracting way. I'm not sure what caused it. I don't know if it's a property of the varnish itself or if I made that middle piece just a little too thick. That's really not good because that's my normal cleanup ink, and that means I won't be able to use it at all. And our final test result was one of our paint markers, and this is an acrylic Montana fluorescent green. You can see that in some of the edges here there were some crystallizations similar to the Dr. P. Martin's bleed proof white ink, but overall I still think this will be safe to use because in the piece itself I plan to only use a little bit of it, so I think we can get away with it. And here's the results of all of our testing, seeing how this paint reacts with our different materials directly, seeing how the materials itself react to the different varnishes, and also seeing how the paint reacts with the different varnishes as well. So I am very excited that we did this. We definitely learned a lot from it, and we avoided making a ton of stupid mistakes that we would have made if we didn't do our test. So now that we created the paint, we know how it works, we know what works with it, we've done all of our testing. What are we going to do with it? We got to make some epic piece of art to justify all the time and energy I have spent making this video, and I think I have something really special that you guys are going to love. And here it is, my drawing of one of my original characters, the Magician. I absolutely love how this came out. This is one of my favorite pencils I've ever done, and I am confident that I can make this piece come alive in a way I've never done before by using glow paint, by using all the fluorescent colors, by using UV effects. I want to make this be something that I've never done, something that you have never seen before, and that's what I'm going to do today. So now that we've done our testing, now that we've made our glow paint, let's go ahead and roll that super time lapse. Inking this piece was a very fun but long process, and that's perfectly fine. I decided to really take my time when I was inking this piece because I wanted it to be as perfect as I could. And while I'm not the best inker in the world, it definitely is one of the best examples of my inking work because I really wanted clean lines. I took my time is because the ink is the foundation for this piece and everything would be built on top of it. If I made a mistake, I wouldn't be able to clean it up as easily or if at all, and I wanted to make sure that the foundation was good so that I started this piece off on the right foot. Now I used a combination of my dip pen and fine liners to do all of the ink work along with Q-tips and several other tools. The reason I use fine liners is because when it comes to stencils and rulers, I personally prefer using them. It makes it so much easier to do, it makes it quicker, and I don't have to worry or risk ink splotches, which if you don't use proper techniques with stencils and rulers is extremely easy to do with dip pens and brushes. After I did my circles with my fine liner, I then moved on to doing the rest of my line width, which was very easy to do. I had a lot of fun using my Speedball dip pen, and the ink I ended up using was the Zix Cartoonist Black ink. It is my favorite Sumi ink of all time and is the best ink for this project, or any type of project like this. Because it's ceramic based, which is what makes Sumi ink, it's alcohol marker proof and waterproof, which is phenomenal. My favorite ink of all time, the Winsor Newton India drawing ink, is waterproof, yes, but alcohol resistant, so it would have caused a lot of smearing and just affect the overall presentation of the piece, so couldn't use that ink unfortunately. The Sumi ink is super smooth, very easy to use, dries matte, and is great for mixed media. So I really took my time using my dip pen to get all the line width done. My approach for character illustration and comic art in general is to get the line width done first, then fill in my areas of black with a brush, and then go in with the cross hatching. And then I work on the background because in my opinion the background is secondary to the characters themselves. Yes, the background helps to tell the story, but I really want my characters to pop because that's really where I spend most of my time illustrating. And that's not always the case with my art. Sometimes I do put more attention to the background, but for this piece I really wanted the character to be front and center, and well, the background's going to be a crazy Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko collage of colors, so didn't really have to worry too much about it. As I mentioned, I got all my line width done with my dip pen and then went in to fill in the areas of black with my brush and then did all the cross hatching. For the cross hatching I could have used a quill nib, but I ended up just using a micron because it was a little quicker, and again I was taking my time with the inking, so I wanted to speed it up in some way. Something that I also want to keep in mind is that while I was doing my cross hatching, I really paid attention to my light source to make sure that everything lined up and looked good. That's why I really took my time with my penciling to make sure that everything was nice, clear, and easy to read, because I don't want to be making these last minute decisions during the inking process because I can really mess up the piece. I really took my time to have clean pencils so that everything had a clean, coherent vision from the start. After I finished all the line work and the inking on the Magician, my attention switched to the background, which was going to be, as I mentioned before, a Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko style background. So I went in with heavy inks and making sure that I filled in all the black areas, and then came the fun part, doing the Kirby crackle, which is one of the most satisfying things to do and one of my favorite effects in comics. The Kirby crackle was invented by none other than Jack Kirby and was his bold, revolutionary technique to use tiny dots to render energy, motion, and all kinds of stuff. So how did they do it back then? Well, I'm gonna be honest, every time you look up a tutorial for it, it's wrong. The real key is actually using Q-tips. Took a Q-tip, dipped it in ink, and just took my time stenciling in the area, and just kind of built up on those solid black areas until I had something that I liked. This doesn't take that long to do. It looks like it takes forever, but it's really not. After about 20-30 minutes at the most, I was really happy with everything and just kind of got a little picky to help with the flow of it. After that, I let the piece dry fully before I even thought about hitting it a color because I knew this needed to be 100% dry. Something that I also did with this piece that I normally don't do is I taped it down to a board, and that's because I knew that this piece would be buckling a lot with all the different materials, all the different mediums I was going to use, and I didn't want it to curl in any way, so definitely do that if you're doing super heavy inks or super mixed media projects. But now that that's done, let's go ahead and get into the insaneness that was coloring, because oh man, I had a blast pushing myself when it came to doing the colors on this piece. This first round of coloring took several hours, but it was worth it because I really took my time to make sure everything was done as nice and as clean as I could. Normally when I illustrate characters though, I don't really like doing the skin parts of them. It's just because I have a lot of trouble with skin tones and trying to get the lighting right, and I'm so glad I established my light source in my pencils so that it was very easy for me to go in with the colors. One thing that's an honest challenge for me personally is because I have olive in my skin and my family is Hispanic, I do kind of have trouble illustrating people of lighter skin tones, so for the magician, it's a lot more challenging for me. After I got her skin colored, I took my time with the brown parts of her suit and really worked up to bring up the different tones. I then worked on the greens, making sure that again that the highlights and the darks were properly placed, and then did the gray of her suit. Normally I like to use a combination of Blick, Winsor Newton, Prisma, and Copics. However, I was really happy with my Copic palette that I built up over the course of collecting Copics. Go check out that Loot series to see how that is going, and just use those because I was really happy with the bright colors and the different shades and values that I was getting. I really took my time building everything up, and while Bristol isn't the best for blending, honestly though, I've been using it for so long and it's such a great paper for different mediums, I can really force a good blend, so I just kept doing that, really making sure that I was working as hard as I can to keep the blend smooth, nice, and saturating the page with a ton of alcohol ink for it. I'm really happy with the values that I got, and if you pay close attention, all of the colors on the Magician when it comes to the marker stage is done very intentionally to be more on the bright muted side. There are powerful highlights, yes, but everything is very kind of muted because it's going to help with the overall piece as a whole to pop. After I was happy with the Magician being colored, I went on to the background. Now the background was going to be a major part of this piece, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I had 8 fluorescent Copics that I was going to use to do the entire background, and I have to be honest, there was a lot of thought and color theory that had to go into this piece because I need to make sure that the colors would blend and look well next to each other, and that I was able to get smooth transitions between them. The yellow to dark yellow was easy, and then the dark yellow to orange was very fun, and the orange to magenta was also really nice and easy to do. But when it came to the magenta to the dark purple, yeah, that was a problem. I really struggled with that blend. It just wasn't easy at all, but I just kept working at it. I broke out the colors blender, broke out some other Copics, really worked at the blend, and while I admit it's not the best in the background, I just wish it could be a little smoother. Then after that, the purple went to the dark blue, then the dark blue to the light blue, and then to the green. Now, interestingly, I don't know why, I found that the green fluorescent Copic didn't react as strongly to the black light as the other ones did. I'm not sure how to fix it, but it wasn't too much of a game changer because of the spray varnish we're going to use at the end would accentuate the glow anyway, so it was fine. It was just something that I noticed and thought was very weird. My attention shifted back to the Magician because now was the highlights. Something that I love about alcohol markers is how mixed media friendly they are. They work well with ink, they work well with watercolor, and they work exceptionally well with wax-based color pencils. So I had a couple of neon color pencils that Prismacolor makes that I picked up for this project, adding in highlights all over where I could to really make her pop. And if you notice, this is really where the piece was coming together and popping in a way that my art normally doesn't. These color pencils, a medium that I'm gonna be honest guys, I'm not really a big fan of because I just don't like using them, but using them in conjunction with other mediums, yeah, I'm falling in love with them because they are amazing in conjunction with alcohol markers. The fact that the wax base of color pencils can melt with actual alcohol ink makes it an incredible tool to have, and it was so fun putting in those highlights. After I was super happy with all the color pencil work, then came to do the match piece, which if you notice, I hadn't colored in yet. I like to use watercolor for it. It helps to give give it another worldly look and really accentuate the energy effect. Now, while these were going to be green, you notice that I actually started with yellow. The reason is because a bright yellow under a green really makes it pop and glow in a way that just doing green won't. And this is why I love watercolors and alcohol markers. The fact that they're semi-transparent allows for layering in such unique ways that you can't do with other mediums. So I really took my time to make sure that the entire blending and all of the green really popped with the yellow underneath. It was a really fun, relaxing process. Now that that was all done, only thing I had to do was let the piece dry, and we're moving on to the next step of this project. After giving the piece plenty of time to dry, it was time for the first round of spraying this piece down. And I used the KMR varnish on this step to make sure everything was nice and sealed and protected so I could go into the next step with no worries about damaging all the hard work that I did before. This process didn't take too long. After giving this piece plenty of time to dry, I then went in to start all of the glow art and the real magic of the piece, and I am so glad I tested everything. If I didn't and tried to do everything on one layer like I normally do, I would have been in such a bad mood seeing all the ink getting smeared. I'm so glad I tested everything. I started by mixing up all my glow paint back together to make sure it was at the right consistency. This paint was super fun to use because it was very transparent but still had a bright glow to it, and the more I layered, the better the glow effect became, the longer it would stay glowing. It did muddy the area that it was being applied to, but it kind of create a really cool film over it. In a weird way, less so in person, more so on camera, actually kind of made it glow a little bit more. And I don't mean glow in terms of the glow paint, I mean kind of glow bright as in the effect of it being energy. It was really cool how it was looking. I just really took my time building up those layers and finding a good balance between too much and too little. And I had to have my UV light on hand to make sure that I was covering areas, because as you can see, it's super easy to think that you covered an area with the glow paint when you didn't. After applying the first layer of glow paint, I then decided to do something that I actually didn't plan for. I did a quick test off camera, and after passing it, I brought it into the main piece, and I was doing a Kirby crackle effect again on top of my original one, but with a UV invisible ink by Optic. It's a really fun invisible ink that glows bright blue under a black light, and I just used my normal technique of a Q-tip to go in. Again, it doesn't take a lot of time to get really good effects, and it doesn't take that long at all to get good coverage. It's surprisingly how effective and efficient this technique is. And since I did this on top of the KMR varnish, I didn't have to worry about it mixing or blending weirdly with the alcohol markers, the color pencils, or the Sumi ink. And on top of that, something that's really cool and really fun and really interesting and definitely worth mentioning is because the KMR varnish has a different finish than the paper itself, all of the circles dried in different ways, adding a little bit of a fun variety to everything. But after that, I let the piece dry for a bit so I didn't smear anything, and then went in with my fluorescent green Malto, which is my favorite paint pen to use with the Magician. Malto are my favorite paint pens in general, and I absolutely love the variety of colors and the high quality pigments. I just went around the piece very carefully, taking my time tracing it to make sure that I had a really cool halo effect. This worked really well to separate her from the background and make her pop more, both with the UV and without the UV light, because that barrier really creates a distinction between her and the background, and I am a fan of that halo effect. Fun fact, if you ever wonder why there's always a magic circle behind the Magician, the inspiration came from halos that you see around the Virgin Mary and other religious icons in traditional Renaissance painting. I really liked the look of it and decided to make it my own thing with that character, so adding another halo effect around her kind of makes sense and really helps to make her pop in different ways, especially against the light blue, dark blue, and purple of the piece. Even a little bit of the magenta too, though I did notice it didn't pop as nicely against the yellow and green, but hey, can't win it all. After that was done, I let it dry for a bit and then went back in to do a little bit more Kirby Crackle. I just wanted a little bit more coverage than I did originally, and that's something that I really like about the Kirby Crackle effect, is that there's no wrong way to do it, and you keep adding to the piece to make it even better. That's the thing about Kirby Crackle. Enough is never enough, you can always add more. Then after everything dried again, I decided to do a couple more touch-up layers, just adding more glow paint again, kind of finding that balance of what is enough versus too much, and you're gonna see that I keep adding a little bit more here and there until I was really have the glow in the coverage and the layers. I also took my spot angular brush and took my time going through the edges of the Magician over that fluorescent green Malto to add the glow paint. This took quite a bit to do, and I really had to use my black light a lot to make sure that I was going over the areas and I wasn't missing any parts or going over the same area twice, because I really wanted her outline to glow. It's a really cool effect and I really like how it looks, so I just took my time and was very careful to do it. I really wanted her outline to pop both with the black light and when you turn off the lights and have that glowing effect. I wanted it to look as cool and awesome as possible. Then after everything was dry, I wasn't happy with how little of the green of the circles were coming out, so I actually took a yellow fluorescent Copic and went over it. Now normally I wouldn't recommend this because acrylics and alcohol markers don't mix, but here it did. It was something about the glow in the dark paint that actually made it blend really well and layer really well well with the Copic marker. So I took my time with it, just building up layers, adding a little bit of detail here and there, really just kind of adding that energy back into the piece. I really like the texture that I got from it, but that's only apparent when you shine the UV light and the glow-in-the-dark paint starts to glow. I still wanted that kind of texture in the visuals when you don't have black lights, and that was the last bit I did on this layer. I really wanted to make sure everything was nice, clean, touched up, and I had that pop, that little oomph that I was wanting, and I'm so happy that I did. After finishing the second round of coloring, I then needed to matte out the magician herself, and the best way to do that was with tracing paper, though I probably should have used acetone, as you'll see later on in the video. All I did was I took my sheet of tracing paper, placed it over the magician, and traced out her outline. I did the circles with a stencil and then cut it out. Special thanks to my lovely wife for giving me this amazing X-Acto knife set. After checking to make sure the silhouette lined up and everything was good, I then took some screws and taped them onto the piece itself. I recommend doing this so that when you start to spray any piece down, you don't have to worry about it coming back up, moving, shifting. It keeps everything nice and in place, which is super good. Plus, I have a bunch of screws all around this garage because my grandfather is a massive handyman and loves to fix things, so they are in easy supply. After everything was taped down, I went outside to spray the UV later, and I had a lot of fun with this. It was nighttime by the time I got to this step, and I decided to bring out my black light, and I'm so glad I did because it made this thing look amazing. I absolutely love how the black light shows the effect of this piece in real time. I love how it glows, I love how it looks. This was just super fun. But I just took my time spraying it down, really applying a thick, nice layer until I got the shine that I was looking for. After that was done, I let the piece stay outside for a couple hours, air out and circulate, and then I brought it in and left it in the garage with the fan on, and I went to bed and let it dry overnight to keep working on it in the morning. While I was waiting for the UV varnish to dry, I got a bit of a fun idea that I thought would be really interesting. I got an empty Copic refill and started mixing up some colors into it. I used my UV Optic Blue ink, a Copic Y06, and a Copic YG07, and just mixed the colors together until I got a green that I really liked. I thought it'd be really fun to go in and actually mix my own Copic tone that could react with the UV light. I only have a blue UV ink that's invisible, and while Optic does make a green, I'm not a fan with how it looks, at least in pictures. So I started mixing the colors, and eventually I had something that I really liked. I then got a Copic Child Colors blender, took it apart and emptied the middle cartridge as best as I could, and then started to fill it up with a custom ink that I made. It took quite a bit of working, it took a little bit of color mixing. I did do some additional work with it off camera, and I just kept mixing the colors until I had something that I was really happy with. Eventually I got a really nice, fun, light green that had a slightly green tint to it that when I first put it down would glow bright blue, but would then shift and start to glow green. I was really happy with the look of it, and I thought it was so cool that I actually made my own Copic and alcohol marker ink. Like, that was super fun. I felt like a scientist during this whole process, and had a marker that I knew I was going to use in a couple of fun strategic ways towards the end of this project. After UV varnish had plenty of time to dry, I took my time removing all the screws to get a big epic reveal for you guys, and I couldn't quite do it. The tracing paper broke, which sucks, but I still like what I got, and I just need to do some cleanup work. One thing that's funny is the original color pencil that I used for the yellow highlights didn't react with the black light when it said it did, so I got a new one. And unfortunately, with all the varnishes, including the Kmart, it was just too smooth for the color pencil to really get a good grip on everything, so I tried as best as I could to add that back in, and I just couldn't quite do it. I also made sure to touch up all of the edges, that everything that was properly covered, both with the glow-in-the-dark paint and with my fluorescent Malto. It was really fun just taking my time, double checking everything. I also went in with that custom Copic that I blended up and applied more of it to the magic circles to really help make it pop and glow in a fun way. I just really took my time cleaning the piece off, making sure that everything looked good, making sure that it was all set for the final spray sealant. Really glad I took my time too, because there was a couple of loose dust particles that would have gotten sealed into it forever, and I wasn't about that, so really glad I took my time doing this first round of cleanup, but we're going to hit it with one more spray varnish to really seal everything up. At night for the final spray layer, this is again with the Kmart varnish to seal everything up so that it'd be ready for the grain reveal. Didn't bring out the black light, kind of wish I did, but I really like how it looks just with the pieces glowing. Really glad I decided to do this at night. And here we are in the final touch-ups. Make sure that everything looks good. I decided to go over the edge of the whole piece one more time, just with that glow paint to make sure that everything was really popping and glowing, as I did a couple tests and I found that the silhouette was broken up a little bit. I also went over again with my custom Copic that I blended up, just to add again another little bit of color and pop and glow to the circles. And after everything was done, I then removed the piece from my board. I had to make sure I was being super careful not to rip everything, peeling off the layers one by one, and then when I had the piece removed, I could remove the tape border that was on it, and it did bleed a little bit through, which kind of does suck. I was hoping for really clean lines, but that's okay. I decided to use my Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White ink to apply to the entire surface of the edges just to make sure everything was nice, clean, properly non-glowing. Something that's great about this ink is that it doesn't react to a black light, so it's able to hit up any area and make sure it was not only a clean edge, but also didn't have any glow and just looked like normal paper. I absolutely love how this came out. It was a little stressful just cleaning up the edges to really make sure everything was nice and clean, but it was a lot of fun to do. And now we are ready for the big, grand, epic reveal. Let's go ahead and take a look at the piece in all of its finished glory. And here we are at the end of the video. After the countless hours of editing and spraying and coloring and layering and all the hard work that went into it, waiting 2 weeks for it to get custom framed because that's just cool, I cannot express to you how proud I am of this piece. This is my most favorite piece I've ever created. This is the piece of artwork I am generally the most proud of because this represents my artistic style perfect. It's mixed media, it's comic booky, it's lively. I love it and I'm so proud of this piece. The reason this piece I went so extra on it, because I wasn't planning on it, is because I started working on this piece right before my grandfather passed away. And this is also the first piece of artwork I've completed since his passing. I wanted to create something that he had never seen before. I wanted to create something that was truly next level, something I didn't think I could do but wanted to try. And I succeeded because I penciled this piece and was going to work on it before he had his accident, and I put it off while he was in the hospital. And then he passed, and then a week and a half went by and I still didn't touch it. Part of me was thinking, if you work on this piece, you're accepting he's gone. And I knew that's not what he wanted. So I remembered everything I told him about this piece, that I'm going to use all these colors and these black lights and this glow-in-the-dark paint. And I remember the smile he had on his face because I told him, when you get out of the hospital, I'm going to show it to you. And he never got out of the hospital. And my grandfather means the world to me. He is just someone that inspires me, that while he's not perfect, because no one is, he was a great grandfather. He was a grandfather to my best friend Taylor. He met my wife before my parents, and I moved back to Tampa to help take care of him. My studio is in the garage that we would spend countless hours in because my grandfather had the garage turned into an office where he would work on different projects. And I feel an emotional connection to this piece where it is amazing because it's me pushing myself in ways I didn't think I could do, but it's also the tragedy and the pain of the loss of my grandfather. And that is very tough. It is very sad. But with that said, I am glad that I pushed myself, and this is a piece I know he would have loved, that he would have been proud of, that he would have taken a picture of and put it on the fridge, because I think it's just that good. So I'd love to hear your guys' opinions in the comment section down below. And I do apologize if this had a little more emotion than I normally do. I like to keep things upbeat, but I can't ignore the emotional chord that this piece hits. So love to hear your guys' opinions in the comment section down below. Stay tuned for more art and animation based content, and remember, we're gonna push ourselves even more. I feel like I have reached a new level in my art that I didn't think was possible, especially when I first started my journey. And we're gonna be doing more amazing, big, huge pieces like this, both in terms of detail, layering, composition, and work, and also size, because I have so many more plans for this channel and I can't wait to share them. Stay tuned for that, and thank you all again for watching. My name is J-Rod at BLACKEST. I draw a power in my own soul, and I'll see you guys in the next clip.